You were born into a script, not a life. And no, that's not poetic exaggeration, Rupelend, it's the literal truth. From the moment you took your first breath, a story began writing itself around you. A name was assigned, a nationality, a religion, a race. You didn't choose these labels, yet they instantly became the parameters of your reality. What you would believe, how you'd see the world, what you'd call normal or true, it was all handed to you like a costume for a role you never auditioned for. And, because everyone else was wearing their own costume, you believed this was freedom. But was it? You've been taught to worship choice. You've been conditioned to believe that free will is your divine right. But what if that freedom was the most sophisticated illusion of all? A cage so carefully constructed that you don't even see the bars. You think you're making decisions. You think you're shaping your life. But are you really? Or are you simply navigating a maze designed by unseen architects, reacting to stimuli, choosing between options that were always meant to keep you looping inside the same confined system? Look around. The world you live in is not the world as it truly is. It is a simulation, not in the digital sense, but in the spiritual and psychological sense. Your reality is a projection, a stage set, designed to distract, contain, and shape your consciousness. The Matrix wasn't just a film, it was a disclosure. A mirror held up to a world too asleep to recognize its reflection. You may think you're awake because your eyes are open, but real awakening has nothing to do with sight. It's about perception. It's about the ability to question everything, even the things you've believed the longest. They don't need to chain your body if they can program your mind. The most effective form of control isn't physical, it's psychological, and they've mastered it. Who are they? Not politicians, not celebrities, not even the figureheads of religion or finance. Those are just actors on the stage. The real directors are hidden, invisible, operating behind veils of influence so subtle, so ancient, that most people wouldn't believe it even if you spelled it out for them. But you feel it, don't you? That nagging sense that something about this world just doesn't fit, that somewhere along the line, something went deeply wrong. That sense of dissonance you carry, it's not a flaw in you, it's a sign you're beginning to wake up. You were born into a world that runs on programming. From the very beginning, your senses were conditioned to only recognize what the system wanted you to see. Your eyes interpret light within a narrow spectrum. Your ears detect only a sliver of sound frequencies. Your brain filters out 99% of data to help you focus. But what if that filtering wasn't to help you survive? What if it was to keep you small, to keep you tame, to keep you blind? Education doesn't teach you how to think, it teaches you what to think. Entertainment doesn't uplift you, it distracts you. News doesn't inform you, it programs your fear response. And society? Society is the software that installs itself in your consciousness before you even realize you're running it. Behave this way, believe this way, fear this, desire that, this is good, that is evil, follow these rules, worship this system, obey without question. If you comply, you're rewarded with the illusion of safety. If you resist, you're labeled dangerous, broken, rebellious, ungrateful. But what if you were never broken at all? What if your resistance is sacred? What if your discomfort is divine? The systems you see around you, government, religion, education, economy, rebranded, they are not new, they are ancient tools of containment, rebranded for the modern mind. The rulers of empires were replaced with politicians, the temples became corporations, the priests put on suits and called themselves scientists, CEOs, experts. But the core objective never changed. Control the narrative, shape perception, feed off your energy, and keep you from remembering who you truly are. And who are you? You are not the name on your birth certificate. You are not the job you do, the role you play, or the body you inhabit. You are awareness. You are consciousness. You are a creator playing inside a dream, but the dream was hijacked. Your reality was scripted by forces who benefit from your amnesia. You forgot that you are divine, infinite, sovereign, and they've spent lifetimes making sure you don't remember. But the cracks are beginning to show. The illusion is glitching. people are waking up in waves, remembering things they were never taught, seeing through the lies, asking the questions they were told not to ask. And once you see the prison, once you realize it's there, you can never unsee it. That's the first step. The system counts on your blind acceptance. It depends on your agreement. But the moment you withdraw your consent, even silently, you begin to unravel its power. You were taught to fear your own power, taught that questioning is dangerous, that authority is sacred, that rules are for your protection. But think back to every time you felt your soul rise up in defiance. That wasn't rebellion, that was recognition. A part of you remembered that you are not here to obey. You are here to awaken, to create, to break the cycle, to remember the truth and embody it. So, ask yourself, when did you first feel that things didn't add up? Was it in school, when the answers felt hollow? Was it in church, when the dogma didn't match the feeling in your heart? Was it in society, when you realized that success often rewards the manipulators and punishes the sincere? That moment of doubt was a moment of clarity. That was your soul whispering through the noise. This isn't real, and it's not. What's real cannot be controlled. What's real cannot be bought, branded, censored, or taxed. What's real lives within you, waiting. And the greatest secret of all is this: the prison was never locked. You were never truly trapped. You were conditioned to believe you were, and that belief kept you bound. But the walls begin to fall when you see them. The lock begins to break when you stop turning the key on yourself. So now, the question isn't whether you're in a prison. The question is, are you ready to walk out of it? Because the script you were born into doesn't have to be the story you live out. You can rewrite it. You can remember. And when you do, nothing and no one can control you again. What if the reality you've trusted your entire life, the one filled with clocks, calendars, borders, careers, and carefully scripted dreams, was never really yours to begin with? What if the life you're living isn't the one you chose, but one that was chosen for you? Designed, not by your soul's desires, but by hidden architects you've never seen. The more you pull back the curtain, the more you start to realize something terrifying and liberating. The world around you, from its governments to its religions, from its education systems to its pop culture, is not the organic evolution of a free society. It is a construct, an illusion. A psychological ecosystem engineered with one purpose: to control the shape of your mind. Most people believe their reality is built by politicians, bankers, CEOs, and world leaders. They think the direction of humanity is steered by elected officials or shadowy economic players pulling strings in smoky rooms. But these are not the real creators of the dream you're trapped in. They are simply middlemen, managers of a reality crafted by something far older, far more intelligent, and far more invested in your obedience than any politician could ever be. These are the unseen forces, the ancient intelligences who have been operating in the background of human civilization for millennia. You won't find them on TV or social media. You won't shake their hand or read their manifesto, but you feel them. You've felt them your whole life, just beneath the surface, hiding in the patterns you can't explain, the confusion that clouds your clarity, the heaviness that seems to follow you no matter how free you try to become. The Gnostics were among the first to speak openly of them. They called them archons, parasitic forces, non-human, non-physical, and yet capable of infecting thought and bending perception. According to ancient Gnostic texts, these entities were not born of earth, but they operate within it, using imitation and manipulation as their primary tools. The archons cannot create, they can only copy, distort, and deceive. Their survival depends on convincing you to abandon your own divine authority and adopt a false version of yourself, one that serves them. Across the world, in a completely different tradition, Zulu shamans spoke of the Chitauri, a race of serpent-like beings that descended from the stars and imposed systems of kingship, language, and hierarchy upon the early human race. They are described not as symbolic figures, but as literal entities who interfered with human evolution, embedding themselves into our consciousness and rewriting the code of our collective behavior. The parallels are chilling. Different continents, different cultures, and yet the same story. Hidden forces manipulating humanity from behind a veil. Modern mystics and experiencers have updated the language, calling them interdimensional parasites, mind leeches, or frequency invaders. The names may vary, but the effect is always the same. Control through illusion. They don't need your body. They don't care about your physical actions, your job title, or your bank account. What they crave is your perception, your inner narrative, your attention, because that is where reality is truly formed, viz., in the field of the mind. If they can plant a seed of limitation, of fear, of dependency inside your consciousness, you will do the rest for them. You will build your own prison, defend it with your beliefs, and call it freedom. These beings, these architects of illusion, operate through suggestion. They do not scream, they whisper. They embed their influence in ideas that appear harmless, education that feels helpful, rules that feel necessary, trends that feel fun. But all of it, the obsession with productivity, the constant seeking of external validation, the fear of rejection, the anxiety around money, the worship of celebrity, all of it is part of a carefully engineered labyrinth. A maze designed to keep your soul looping inside a false simulation of life, one that looks just real enough to keep you from questioning it. And when you do begin to question it, when you start asking the deeper questions about who you really are, where you come from, and what this world truly is, that's when the resistance kicks in. That's when the distractions flood in, the fatigue sets in, the rational voice in your head urges you to stop. This is not random, this is programming. The illusion fights back when you start waking up. It adapts, reasserts itself, and pushes you back into the roles it wants you to play. You've seen it your whole life, even if you didn't know what you were looking at. Think of the times you've had sudden, intrusive thoughts that felt out of place, thoughts that didn't feel like yours. Or the times you felt drained after watching certain media, spending time in certain places, or even being around certain people. That's not coincidence. That's energy manipulation. These forces know how to exploit your frequency, not just emotionally, but vibrationally. They understand how to create resonant fields that suppress your intuition, disconnect you from source, and keep you locked into the collective trance. You weren't meant to be a puppet. You weren't meant to live a life that feels like a series of survival tactics. You came here to create, to remember, to embody the vastness of what you truly are. But to do that, you must first see through the curtain. You must understand that reality is not merely observed, it is programmed. And you are not the default author of that program, not yet. But here's the key, here's the truth that terrifies them. While they may have designed the illusion, they cannot hold it together without your belief. Their power is entirely dependent on your consent, unconscious or not. That is why they invest so heavily in distraction, division, and doubt. Because the moment you begin to reclaim your awareness, I see you, the moment you remember that you are not a pawn, but a creator, the illusion starts to crack. What you've accepted as normal is not normal. What you've called reality is not real. And the ones who built it, they don't want to be seen, because being seen is the first step to being defeated. They fear your awareness more than anything else. Because your awareness holds the blueprint to a different world. A world they cannot enter. A world built from truth, from unity, from the sovereign energy of a mind that no longer submits to their control. And now that you know, what will you do with this awareness? There's a truth so disturbing, so hidden in plain sight, that once you understand it, you'll never look at your emotions the same way again. You've been taught to believe that your feelings are yours, personal, internal, and purely psychological. But what if your emotions are more than reactions? What if they are fuel, not just for your life experience, but for something, or someone, feeding beyond the veil of what you can see? You live in an energetic universe. This isn't theory. It's measurable, observable, and ancient knowledge. Everything that exists vibrates at a specific frequency, and that includes you. Your thoughts, your feelings, your states of consciousness all emit a vibrational signal. But here's what no one told you. That signal doesn't just disappear into space, it's harvested, collected, used, and not for your benefit. Fear, guilt, shame, lust, despair, rage. These are not just low frequencies, they are delicacies to certain entities that exist beyond the range of your physical senses. You've heard of parasites in the physical body, viruses, bacteria, leeches, but there are energetic parasites too. Non-physical beings whose existence is dependent on the vibrational nourishment produced by your suffering. They don't feed on your body, they don't want your mind, they want your energy. More specifically, they want the kind of energy that fractures you, that keeps you locked in loops of pain, regret, and confusion. These entities are not new. References to them can be found across every ancient culture if you know where to look. The Sumerians called them gods, but their stories were full of deceit and manipulation. In the Vedic texts, there were asuras, manasuras, beings who thrived on human ignorance and illusion. In the mystery schools of Egypt and Greece, initiates were warned of invisible forces that seek to siphon the unguarded energy of the unaware. The names differ, the symbols change, but the core truth remains the same. Humanity has been farmed. Now, before you dismiss this as myth or metaphor, ask yourself this: why is the world so addicted to suffering? Why are the news cycles flooded with terror, outrage, and division? Why is social media engineered to trigger jealousy, insecurity, and tribalism? Why are you taught to replay your traumas, to identify with your pain, to never fully let go of the past? It's not because humans are inherently broken, it's because there is a system, with energetic and psychological, that benefits from keeping you in a constant state of emotional agitation. You weren't meant to live in this frequency. Your natural state is harmony, joy, love, peace, but those vibrations don't produce the same yield for the invisible harvesters. You've been manipulated to live in a state of emotional volatility so that you unconsciously generate what they need. It's not just about keeping you asleep, it's about keeping you reactive. Think about your worst memories, the heartbreaks, the betrayals, the losses. Think about how easily those memories rise when triggered. Think about how your body reacts, the racing heart, the tight chest, the tension in your stomach. That physiological response isn't random. It's energy, it's power, and unless you learn how to transmute it, it doesn't stay with you, it gets siphoned. Why do you think trauma is so normalized in our culture? Why is it glorified in film, echoed in music, woven into the fabric of daily life? Because unresolved trauma creates a constant, low-frequency signal that never stops transmitting. It becomes part of your vibrational signature. And when enough people are vibrating at that frequency, it creates a collective emotional atmosphere ripe for extraction. This is why wars are sustained, why injustice lingers, why division is fueled. It's not just about control of land or policy or economy, it's about control of emotion. Fear is not a side effect of these events, it is the product, it is the harvest, and it is being consumed. There's a reason ancient mystics devoted their lives to mastering their emotions, not because emotions are bad, but because emotions are powerful. They understood that to feel is to create, and whatever you create becomes a beacon, a signal that shapes your reality and affects the energetic landscape around you. High-frequency emotions create expansion. Low-frequency emotions create contraction. And when you contract, when you shrink into fear or rage or shame, you become easier to feed from. Now imagine a system that doesn't just feed once, but creates endless loops to keep you producing that energy. That's what trauma cycles are. That's what generational pain is. You're not just suffering from your own wounds, you're echoing the wounds of your parents, your ancestors, your culture. You were born into a field of unresolved pain that was never meant to be healed, only perpetuated. But you can stop the loop. The first step is awareness. The second is reclamation. You have to reclaim your emotional field, guard your energy like your life depends on it, because energetically, it does. You must begin to question every emotional trigger. Every time you feel yourself drop into a lower state, ask yourself, is this mine? Is this real? Or is this an inherited or induced frequency designed to extract from me? Don't just feel. Observe. Don't just react. Transmute, because here's the secret they don't want you to know. Your energy is not only harvestable, it's also powerful beyond comprehension. When you learn to master your emotional state, you no longer just stop the harvesting, you begin to reverse it. You become a source of vibrational clarity in a world drowning in noise. Have you ever noticed that certain people feel energetically exhausting to be around? That some environments leave you drained for no apparent reason? It's because you're already sensitive to the exchange of energy, but you were never taught how to manage it. You were never shown how to protect your field, how to cleanse your frequency, how to become sovereign. But sovereignty begins with responsibility. You cannot blame the harvesters if you continue to feed them. You cannot escape the matrix if you're emotionally addicted to the dramas it provides. You have to break your own loops. You have to unplug, not just mentally, but emotionally. That's the real exit. That's the real freedom. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, ask yourself, who or what is benefiting from this emotion right now? Is it serving your evolution, or is it serving your containment? That one question can change everything. Because if emotions are the currency of the invisible world, then the mastery of your emotions is the key to reclaiming your reality. And once you remember that, you stop being a battery. You become a creator. You become a sovereign field of energy that no longer feeds the parasitic grid. You become untouchable. And that is the one thing they fear the most. You've probably wondered why the same families seem to stay in power generation after generation. Why the names change, the faces change, yet somehow the same blueprint of control repeats itself. It's not just politics, it's not just money, and it's certainly not just coincidence. The truth runs deeper, through centuries, through lineages, through blood. What you're seeing on the surface is the result of a much older game being played behind the curtain, a game where blood is not just symbolic of family, but of frequency. The so-called elites you've been taught to admire, respect, or envy, they're not merely rich or connected. They are the gatekeepers of an energetic grid meant to keep humanity asleep. Certain bloodlines are not like the others. They have been meticulously preserved, bred, and positioned not by accident but by design. Their roots trace back to ancient priesthoods, pharaohs, and kings, to Babylon, to Sumer, to Atlantis. These weren't just rulers of land. They were custodians of esoteric knowledge, gatekeepers of the hidden sciences of energy, spirit, and soul manipulation. As empires collapsed and civilizations shifted, these bloodlines didn't disappear. They changed names, changed regions, and rebranded themselves for each new age, like actors stepping into new costumes on the same stage. But the script remained the same, 19. Control the people by controlling the current of energy that flows through society. Control the narrative, the money, the law, the education, the religion, and you control the frequency. You've likely heard that power is passed through family, that royalty marries royalty, that high-ranking officials often descend from other high-ranking officials. But what you may not have realized is that this is not simply nepotism or tradition. It is a form of energetic containment. These families, ND, and the secret societies they operate within, have learned how to preserve a particular frequency through blood. This isn't folklore, it's frequency biology. Your blood carries more than your genetics. It carries your spiritual memory. It carries access points to dimensions of consciousness, either opened or shut. The so-called blue bloods are not blue because of status. They are blue because of their vibrational lineage. They carry codes, certain energetic permissions, that give them easier access to manipulate the reality field we all live in. They understand how this reality works. They understand that it is not solid, not fixed, not random. They understand that thought creates form, that emotion fuels manifestation, and that belief structures shape entire civilizations. And they know that if the masses ever woke up to this truth, truly woke up, the illusion would shatter overnight. That is why these bloodlines protect the knowledge so fiercely. They hide it in secret symbols, in architecture, in rituals. They hide it in plain sight, cloaked in entertainment, politics, and religion, and they train their offspring from birth to guard it with their lives, not for your benefit, but to ensure their control remains uninterrupted. You might think royal titles are ceremonial, that presidents are elected, that billionaires are self-made, but if you trace the bloodlines, you will find the same families interwoven across the highest levels of government, finance, military, and media. They appear to be different people, different parties, different ideologies, but this, too, is part of the illusion. Their public differences are theater, roles played to keep you emotionally invested in a system that was never built for you to win. Behind closed doors, the bloodlines remain loyal to each other because they understand something you were never taught, that real power lies in energetic unity, not division. And this power isn't just symbolic, it's spiritual. These families perform rituals not as superstition, but as energy work. They use symbols not as decoration, but as vibrational technology. They align events, announcements, and world crises with astrological timings, not out of curiosity, but out of knowledge. They are tapping into energetic portals, synchronizing with cosmic rhythms, and using these moments to direct mass consciousness. When millions of people watch a royal wedding, a celebrity breakdown, or a sudden global emergency, the collective attention becomes a battery, a harvest. The emotions you feel, fear, awe, grief, celebration, kuminan, are not incidental. They are cultivated, because emotion is energy, and energy is currency in the unseen realms. This is the spiritual manipulation no one talks about, because if you knew how powerful your energy truly was, you would stop giving it away so easily. You would stop feeding their rituals with your unconscious agreement. You would stop bowing to the symbolic illusions they hold over you. The throne is not just a chair, it's a vibrational conduit. The crown is not just an ornament, it's a circuit. These objects, these traditions, these ceremonies, they are designed to maintain the energetic grid of control that overlays your reality. They are not for show, they are for spell work. And yet, the greatest trick these bloodline gatekeepers ever pulled was convincing you that their power is natural, inevitable, or harmless, that it's just politics, just inheritance, just tradition. But it's not. It is the architecture of a spiritual hierarchy designed to keep you looking outward, kneeling down, staying small. It is the engineered belief that someone else has more right to divinity than you do. That someone else's blood is purer, someone else's authority is greater, someone else's word is law. But no one has more access to the divine than you do. That has always been the lie, that has always been the spell. And here's the deeper layer. These bloodlines aren't just protecting themselves, they are protecting the entities that operate through them. Remember the architects of illusion? These non-physical parasites cannot directly manipulate this plane. They need vessels, hosts, lineages that carry the frequency compatibility for their influence. That is why the bloodlines are so carefully preserved, because they are the gatekeepers between realms. Through them, the manipulation enters our world, cloaked in charisma, money, legislation, and fame. But beneath it all, something else speaks, something ancient, something hungry. If this sounds dark, it's because it is. But it's not hopeless. Because no matter how long these bloodlines have ruled, no matter how many structures they've built, they still rely on your agreement. They cannot force your soul to submit. They can only manipulate your belief until you give it away. But once you begin to see through the veil, once you remember that your power does not come from lineage, title, or permission, Wemeiza, it comes from within, everything begins to change. The moment you stop worshipping their illusion is the moment their illusion begins to fall. Their control is real, but it is not absolute. It is only held together by the silence of those who see and the sleep of those who don't. But you are no longer asleep, you are remembering. And the more you remember, the less their symbols hold power over you, the less their rituals affect you, the more you reclaim your energy, your awareness, your sovereignty. That's how the illusion ends, not through rebellion, but through remembrance. And now you know who stands behind the curtain. What will you do with that knowing? Words are not just tools, they are enchantments. living vibrations that shape how you see, how you feel, and ultimately, how you experience reality. You've used them your entire life without questioning their origin, their structure, or their true purpose. But if you could step back, just for a moment, and feel beneath the surface of language, you'd begin to realize something ancient and disturbing. You are under a spell. A spell so intricately woven into your consciousness that you can no longer separate your thoughts from your words, your truths from your programming. It's no coincidence that we call it spelling. Every word you speak is a cast, a vibration released into the field of creation. When you speak, you are declaring to the universe what is real to you. But the language you were taught, the alphabet you memorized, the grammar you were graded on, it was never neutral. It was never just a way to express thought. It was a system designed to limit what you could even conceive. There was a time, long ago, before language as you know it, when humanity was different. Not in appearance, but in consciousness. You existed in harmony with one another, not just through empathy, but through direct energetic knowing. Communication didn't require sounds or symbols. It flowed instantly, mind to mind, heart to heart, soul to soul. This was the original state, 1920. A telepathic unity where misunderstanding didn't exist because truth wasn't filtered. It was shared. In that state, there was no lying, no hiding, no manipulation. There were no debates over meaning, no wars over words. You didn't need proof, you felt resonance. You didn't need translation, you were the language itself. But something happened. Something that fractured that sacred field and shattered humanity's inner knowing into a million disconnected fragments. That something was the spoken word. The first languages weren't innocent inventions. They were introduced, by force or deception, into the human psyche, not to enhance connection, but to control perception, not to share meaning, but to divide it. With words came interpretation, with interpretation came confusion, and with confusion came the opportunity to manipulate. Suddenly, reality became negotiable. Suddenly, whoever controlled the language controlled the truth. The spoken word gave rise to duality. No longer was a tree simply experienced as it was, now it was tree, a symbol, a sound, a concept. You went from being immersed in the world to being separate from it. Naming became the first act of separation. Once something was named, it was no longer part of you. It became objectified, and with objectification came domination. Think about how many times in your life you've misunderstood someone, or been misunderstood. Think about how many conflicts started over words, how many wars were justified through them. Language didn't create connection, it created argument. It gave birth to judgment, labels, categories. It made it possible to lie, to manipulate, to distort reality, and call it truth. It gave power to those who mastered rhetoric, not wisdom. This wasn't an accident, it was a design. Certain ancient teachings suggest that language was introduced as a tool of control by beings who understood the power of vibration. They knew that if they could rewire the way humans processed reality, if they could replace direct knowing with symbols and sounds, they could hijack not just communication, but creation itself. Because thought is creation, and thought, when confined to language, becomes a cage. The alphabet you use today is not just a set of letters, it is a frequency grid. Each letter holds a vibrational signature. Each word you speak is a spell that reinforces the matrix around you. Why do you think legal systems use such specific language? Why is it called legalese? Because words hold energetic contracts. Saying, "I understand" in court is not about comprehension, it's about agreeing to stand under the authority of the system. And most people never even realize the spells they're casting. Even in daily life, the spells are everywhere. You say, "I am tired," and reinforce that state of being. You say, "I have no time," and you compress your experience of time. You say, "I can't," and the universe obeys your command. The more you repeat these phrases, the more solid your limitations become. Your language becomes your cage, your sentence, literally. But here's the deeper layer. Language didn't just separate you from each other. It separated you from yourself. It fragmented your internal world. You now talk to yourself in words. You describe your emotions instead of feeling them. You judge your thoughts instead of observing them. You narrate your life instead of living it. Your inner monologue has become a background noise that drowns out the voice of your soul. In ancient times, silence was sacred, because in silence, the original language could be heard again, the language of resonance. It was not taught in schools or written in books. It was felt. It was remembered. This is why certain indigenous cultures still revere song, rhythm, breath, and gesture as more truthful than speech. They have preserved remnants of a time before the fall into verbal complexity, a time when the heart spoke louder than the tongue. Now, this doesn't mean language is inherently evil. It means it's been weaponized. Words can still be powerful tools of healing, of intention, of awakening, but only if used consciously. Only if you understand their double-edged nature. You must ask yourself, am I speaking from habit or from awareness? Are the words I use reinforcing the illusion or piercing through it? You've been told that knowledge is power. But what kind of knowledge? The kind written in carefully edited history books? The kind filtered through biased media? Or the kind whispered through ancient chants, symbols, and stillness? True knowledge doesn't speak in paragraphs. It reveals itself in presence. This is why affirmations can be so powerful. Not because when used with intent, they begin to reprogram the language spell. Not because the words themselves are magic, but because you are reclaiming authorship of your reality. When you say, I am enough, with full awareness, you're not just stating a belief, you're restoring an ancient frequency. You're reactivating the field of unity that existed before words divided you from your source. You must become the watcher of your own words. Speak less, feel more. Listen not just to what is being said, but to the energy behind it. Catch yourself when you speak spells of limitation, and rewrite them in real time. Begin to use words as a bridge back to the silence, not as a substitute for it, because here's the secret they never wanted you to know. Beyond all language, beyond all mental chatter, beyond the noise of the world, there is a frequency where all beings are connected, a realm where truth is felt, not spoken, where unity is not an idea, but a living experience. That realm is not far, it's right here, beneath the surface, beneath the words. And every time you quiet your mind, every time you choose awareness over reaction, every time you drop into presence instead of performance, you take one step closer to remembering the language that cannot be corrupted, the language of your soul. There was a time when spirituality was a direct experience, when the divine wasn't something you had to chase or pray to, but something you felt moving through your breath, your body, your very awareness. It wasn't taught in sermons or printed in books. It lived in the wind, in the trees, in the sacred silence of your own soul. There was no middleman, no mediator, no authority standing between you and the source, but that was before the shift. Before mysticism was broken down, diluted, and repackaged into obedience. Before they turned direct communion into doctrine and freedom into fear. What you call religion today did not begin as religion. It began as inner knowing, a felt sense of connection with something infinite. It was not bound by language or ritual or hierarchy. It was the pulse of life itself, experienced directly in dreams, in visions, in the awe of existence. But over time, that connection was hijacked. The gate to the divine was never closed, but it was heavily guarded. The ones who wished to control you understood that the fastest way to enslave a soul was to convince it that God lives somewhere outside of itself. That truth had to be taught by another. That worthiness must be earned. That salvation is conditional. So they took the sacred and made it systemic. They stripped mysticism of its wildness, its unpredictability, its intimacy, and replaced it with rules, laws, rituals you must perform, prayers you must recite, sins you must confess. They externalized the divine so thoroughly that you began to forget it was ever inside you. You were taught to look up instead of in, to kneel instead of rise, to ask for forgiveness from a figure in the sky, instead of realizing you were never separate to begin with. The God you were given is not the true source. The true source does not demand worship. It does not punish or reward. It does not choose favorites or require blood sacrifice. It is not male or female, angry or pleased. It is not a being, it is being itself, a living intelligence, an endless field of love, awareness, and creation. But the God you were handed? That was an invention, a throne-shaped mirror designed to keep you small, a sky-father figure placed far above you, unreachable without the approval of priests, prophets, or holy men. You were told to beg, to bow, to obey, not because the divine required it, but because your obedience served those who stood in front of it, pretending to speak on its behalf. Organized religion became less about transformation and more about control. It created a vibrational hierarchy, a spiritual caste system in which some were seen as closer to God than others. Prophets, saints, popes, gurus, titles that placed one person above the rest, while subtly teaching that you are spiritually inferior, that you must go through them to be heard, to be saved, to be blessed. But that is not how Source works. Divinity does not flow through rank, it flows through resonance. It does not respond to position, it responds to purity. Every tradition on this planet once had mystics, those rare individuals who cracked through the illusion of structure and accessed the infinite within. And what did they always say? That God is within you. That the kingdom is inside, that divinity is not something to believe in, but something to remember. And what happened to those mystics? They were exiled, silenced, burned. Branded heretics by the very religions that claim to serve truth. Because the mystic threatens the machine. The mystic doesn't need permission. The mystic doesn't kneel. So the system taught you to fear your own power, to feel guilt for questioning, to distrust your intuition. They gave you sacred books and said, "This is all you need." But what if the words in those books are fragments? What if they're distorted, edited, rearranged to fit an agenda you were never told about? Most holy texts carry deep truths, yes, but those truths are wrapped in layers of fear, judgment, and tribal laws that no longer serve the evolution of your soul. And yet, you were told to accept them as the infallible word of God. Why? Because if they can convince you that truth only exists in a book, they can convince you not to look for it in yourself. You were born with an inner compass, a direct line to the infinite. But every time you were told you were a sinner, every time you were taught that someone else must die for your salvation, that compass grew dimmer. Shame became your foundation, fear became your language, and so you began to equate control with holiness. You started to feel safe inside the cage, as long as it was labeled sacred. You thought you were walking a spiritual path, but what you were really doing was following a program. Look at the way religions divide. How they split families, communities, nations. How wars have been fought over whose version of the infinite is correct. But truth doesn't fight. Truth doesn't divide. Truth unites. It dissolves boundaries. It brings you into oneness. So ask yourself, why would a divine system be used to pit people against each other? Why would it justify conquest, oppression, and suffering, unless, of course, it was no longer divine? What they call blasphemy is often just sovereignty in disguise. To question the dogma, to walk away from the system, to seek the divine through your own experience, red is the most radical thing you can do. Because it threatens the hierarchy. It says, I no longer need to obey to be holy. I no longer need to fear to be worthy. I no longer need to believe in separation. And when enough people realize this, the entire structure begins to collapse. But this isn't about destroying belief. It's about reclaiming it. It's about remembering that faith is not submission, it's alignment. True spirituality is not a performance. It's not a set of rules. It's not attendance at a building. It is the courage to meet yourself fully, to listen to the quiet whisper of your soul, to ask the questions no one else will ask, to walk the path that isn't lit, but feels true in your bones. That is what they fear. Not atheism, not rebellion, but awakened divinity. So if you've ever felt disconnected from the religion you were raised in, you are not lost, you are remembering. If you've ever questioned the image of a wrathful God, you are not damned, you are awakening. If you've ever looked up and wondered if there's more, there is. But you won't find it in obedience. You'll find it in freedom, in stillness, in your own breath. The true temple has no walls. The true priest speaks in silence. The true scripture is written in your heart. And once you realize this, you don't need anyone to tell you what is sacred. Because everything becomes sacred. Your life, your pain, your joy, your path. They can take your rituals. They can claim your symbols. But they cannot touch the truth that lives inside of you. That truth is older than any religion, stronger than any dogma. And the moment you stop searching for it outside yourself is the moment you remember it was never gone. Now you see what they turned the sacred into, a system of control. But now you also know something else. The real sacred is waking back up inside of you. Your senses are lying to you. Not because they're broken, but because they've been limited, carefully, strategically, and deliberately. From the moment you opened your eyes for the first time, you were led to believe that what you see is all there is. That the colors you perceive, the sounds you hear, the textures you touch, are the full spectrum of reality. But they're not. What you experience through your five senses is a tiny sliver of a much larger multidimensional field. A fraction, a trickle, a highly curated broadcast from a much more expansive, infinite signal. You were born into a world designed to keep you from seeing the world. Science itself admits this. Your eyes detect less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. You cannot see infrared. You cannot see ultraviolet. Your ears hear only a narrow band of frequency. Your sense of touch responds only to limited types of pressure, heat, and vibration. Yet beyond those thresholds lie entire realities, currents of energy, layers of consciousness, streams of information that exist all around you, but remain invisible to your conditioned perception. It's not that they're not there. It's that you've been tuned away from them. Imagine standing in front of a vast ocean, but being told all you need to navigate it is a single drop. That's what you're working with. A drop of sensory input in an ocean of unperceived reality. And the systems that dominate this world, numbered, the ones that claim to inform, educate, and entertain you, have zero interest in helping you expand beyond that drop. In fact, they've spent generations perfecting the art of keeping you locked inside it. They built the grid, not just the physical one, the cities, roads, and cell towers, but the perceptual one, the mental lattice that defines the boundaries of what you're allowed to call real. That grid isn't made of metal, it's made of programming. It's a net of definitions, beliefs, and illusions that catch your consciousness and keep it from soaring. It tells you what's possible and what isn't. It defines you by what you can measure, name, or profit from. And everything outside of that framework, it's dismissed as fantasy, conspiracy, or madness. You were taught to believe that the physical world is all there is, that what can't be observed under a microscope or recorded on a device doesn't exist. But this belief is not based on truth. It's based on control. Because if you realized how much exists beyond the veil, not if you saw how vast and interconnected reality truly is, you would become ungovernable. Your fear would vanish, your sense of limitation would dissolve, and the very foundation of the manufactured grid would begin to collapse. That's why they introduced the screens. Digital devices didn't just arrive to make life convenient. They arrived to replace your inner vision with artificial sight, to overwrite your intuition with algorithms, to take your attention, your most valuable asset, and trap it inside loops of stimulus and distraction. You've been told that technology connects you. But have you noticed how it often leaves you feeling more disconnected than ever? From yourself, from others, from the earth, from the silence that once allowed you to hear your own soul. You carry the grid with you now, in your pocket, in your hand, on your desk. It lights up your face, tracks your patterns, feeds you curated content, and whispers half-truths into your subconscious day and night. These aren't tools, they're transmitters. Portals through which the frequency of the grid is maintained. Each ping, each notification, each scroll is a tether that keeps you anchored to the surface level of reality. You may think you're exploring the world through your phone, but in truth, the phone is narrowing your world, pixel by pixel. But it goes deeper, because behind the devices is the code, and behind the code is intention. The digital grid is not neutral. It's designed with purpose. It shapes what you believe, what you fear, what you desire. Algorithms are not just sorting information, reinforcing you, steering your perception, reinforcing the illusion, rewarding compliance and punishing dissent. And it's not just what you're being shown, it's what you're not being shown. The reality you never even knew existed because the grid erased it before you could discover it. They have taken the invisible prison of the mind and made it visible, shiny, addictive, and interactive. You think you're free because you can click, swipe, and choose. But all the options were predetermined. All the roads lead back to the same center. Control, through information, attention, and vibration. And it's all about vibration. The manufactured grid isn't just informational, it's energetic. Every signal you receive through your devices, every frequency emitted by cell towers, satellites, and Wi-Fi networks, it all interacts with your own electromagnetic field. The human body is not just biological, it is electrical, and those subtle energy systems are being bombarded constantly. Over time, this bombardment doesn't just affect your health, it affects your awareness. It dulls your perception, it clouds your inner senses, and slowly, quietly, it detunes you from the higher frequencies that connect you to your multidimensional self. They are not just managing your data, they are managing your state of consciousness. But there's something they can't touch. No matter how advanced their grid becomes, no matter how much they map and track and analyze, there is one place they can't reach, unless you let them. Your inner realm, the vast, infinite landscape within you, the realm of vision, intuition, clarity, and truth, remains sovereign. The grid cannot penetrate it unless you hand over the keys. And that's what they've been conditioning you to do since birth. To surrender your inner knowing, your direct connection to Source, in exchange for externally approved knowledge and identity. But you can reverse it, you can unplug, not just from the device, not just from the internet, but from the frequency of the grid itself. It begins with awareness, with recognizing when your attention is being hijacked, with noticing when your energy is being drained, with observing how your body reacts to certain environments, certain screens, certain frequencies. These reactions are messages. They are your soul's way of telling you that something is off. Once you see the grid, you can begin to move outside of it, not by fighting it, but by rising above it, by choosing presence over distraction, nature over noise, stillness over stimulation, by remembering what it feels like to think your own thoughts, to feel your own feelings, to connect with the world not through a screen, but through your breath, your body, and your inner vision. You were never meant to be confined. You are a multidimensional being, a receiver and transmitter of infinite frequency ranges. The grid can only hold you if you believe that what you see is all there is. But there is so much more, beyond the filtered spectrum, beyond the curated illusion, beyond the manufactured world of noise and numbers, lies the real world, raw, luminous, vibrating with life and intelligence. The moment you stop trusting the limits of your senses and start listening to the frequency of your soul, the grid begins to dissolve. Its power depends on your belief in its completeness. Withdraw your belief, and you withdraw its strength. Because, no matter how advanced the prison becomes, the key will always be within you. You've been taught that time is a straight line, a past you can't change, a present you're trapped in, and a future you hope might be better. You've been conditioned to move through life like a passenger on a train that only goes one direction. You look back at what was, you wait for what will be, and you rarely question who built the track you're on. But what if that track isn't real? What if the entire structure of time as you've known it is a fabrication, not a law of nature, but a mental program designed to keep you running in circles while thinking you're moving forward? Time, in truth, is not linear. It's not even objective. It is psychological. It bends to awareness. It stretches or collapses depending on where your consciousness rests. When you're deeply immersed in something, hours can pass like seconds. When you're trapped in grief or fear, a single minute can feel like eternity. This isn't a glitch in perception, it's a clue. A clue that time does not flow like a river. It loops, it spirals, it recycles. And the ones who control this matrix understand that better than anyone else. They don't just control the hours on your clock or the dates on your calendar. They control the patterns your mind uses to interpret time. They engineer loops, trauma loops, emotional loops, karmic loops, so that even as your body ages, your soul remains stuck in the same unresolved cycles. You've felt it, haven't you? That sense of déjà vu, not just in events, but in emotions. The same relationships, repeating with different faces. The same mistakes wearing new disguises. The same fears you thought you'd buried, suddenly surfacing in new forms. That is not coincidence. That is programming. Think about how society is structured. The endless news cycle that repeats the same narratives, only with different headlines. The political theater that rotates players, but never the script. The school system that resets every September, churning out generation after generation of obedient minds. You are made to feel as if you're evolving, progressing, moving through history, reacting. You're looping, reacting, repeating. And this looping keeps you energetically tethered to the illusion, because when your consciousness is trapped in repetition, it cannot expand into the present moment. And without presence, you have no power. But the control goes deeper, because it's not just your personal experience of time they manipulate, it's the collective memory of humanity. You think of history as a record, a factual timeline of what happened. But history is not a record, it's a script, a curated storyline written by those who benefit from your forgetfulness. They decide what gets remembered and what gets erased. They build monuments to their version of the past and burn the texts that contradict it. You are not living in the wake of true history, you are living in the shadow of a manufactured past. Every society that has ever sought to control its people has done so by controlling the narrative of time. They tell you who the heroes were, they tell you what progress means. They tell you which tragedies to mourn and which ones to ignore, and in doing so, they define your identity. Because if they can convince you that your past was powerless, they can make you believe that your future will be too, that you are a product of inevitability, not creation. But that is a lie. You are not a result of time, you are a creator of it. There's a reason ancient civilizations understood time differently. Many of them didn't measure time in straight lines, but in circles, spirals, or cycles. The Mayans, the Egyptians, the Vedic sages, they saw time not as a prison, but as a rhythm. They understood that all things rise and fall in patterns, that energy moves in seasons, that you are not here to escape time, but to master it. Because, once you begin to perceive time as a living, breathing field, restar, something you interact with rather than something you are ruled by, the loops begin to unravel. This is why your awakening is so dangerous to the system, because the moment you remember your power to collapse time, to shift timelines, to step outside of the loop, you become unpredictable, uncontrollable, a threat to the script. And so they create distractions. They flood your life with urgency, deadlines, and artificial emergencies. They keep your mind in a constant state of survival, so you never have the clarity to pause and ask, is this even real? Look at how technology reinforces the loop. Social media feeds that recycle the same dopamine triggers. Algorithms that show you what you've already seen, what you've already liked, what you've already believed. Your digital life is not designed to expand you. It is designed to keep you in resonance with your past self. Because the longer you identify with who you were yesterday, the harder it is to become something new today. And then there's karma, one of the most misunderstood concepts of all. Karma isn't punishment, it's pattern. It's the echo of unconsciousness repeating until awareness changes it. The system loves to hijack karma and turn it into a threat, do good or else. But the truth is far more liberating. You are not bound by karma, you are bound by your agreement to the loop. When you become conscious of the pattern and stop feeding it with belief, emotion, and repetition, it dissolves. The contract ends, the cycle completes. You step out of time and into presence. That is the key. Presence. The now. The eternal field of awareness from which all timelines emerge. When you root yourself in presence, the illusion of time loses its grip. The future stops feeling like something you must chase. The past stops feeling like something you must carry. You begin to create from a place of stillness, clarity, and alignment. And in that moment, you are no longer a slave to the wheel. You are the one turning it. But be warned, the moment you start exiting the loop, you will feel resistance. The system will throw distractions at you. Old wounds will rise, fears will whisper that you're losing control, but that's just the loop defending itself. That's just the echo of your old identity trying to pull you back in. You don't need to fight it, you just need to witness it without reacting. Let it pass like a storm, and it will. Because patterns are not permanent, they are agreements, and you can revoke your consent. You were never meant to live inside a loop. You were meant to spiral upward, to move through cycles with awareness and expansion, to revisit familiar themes not as a prisoner, but as a master. Life will always come in waves, but you were not made to drown in them. You were made to ride them, to rise with them, to evolve beyond them. And now, the question becomes clear. What loops are you still feeding? What timelines are you still attached to? Whose version of history are you still believing? Because once you begin to question time itself, once you start to see it as the illusion that it is, you will find the cracks in the prison. You will step into the only moment that ever truly exists. This one, and from this moment, everything can change. From the moment you first stepped into a classroom, something subtle but devastating began to happen. You didn't notice it at the time. It felt normal, innocent. A brightly colored room filled with letters and numbers, smiling adults, tidy rows of desks. You were told you were there to learn, to grow, to become someone. But in truth, you were already someone powerful, someone vast, someone ancient. And the system was not designed to help you remember that, it was designed to help you forget. The education system is not what it pretends to be. It is not a sanctuary for curiosity or an incubator for brilliance. It is a mechanism of programming, carefully crafted to overwrite your innate knowing with external authority. It replaces your internal compass with a standardized script. And in doing so, it accomplishes one of the most effective forms of mass control, making you forget who you are and making you believe that forgetting is growing up. From the earliest years, your experience of the world is filtered, corrected, and redirected. The wonder you naturally feel toward nature, imagination, sensation, silence, is slowly replaced by tests, rules, and rankings. Instead of being taught how to think, you're taught what to think. Instead of being encouraged to ask the right questions, you're rewarded for giving the right answers. Answers that were already decided long before you arrived. Answers that keep the system running, not your soul awakened. And what are those answers really? Rehearsed lies, sanitized versions of history, half-truths parading as facts, fragments of knowledge stripped of their context and sacredness. You're taught that you are a body, not a soul, that the world is solid, not vibrational, that consciousness is produced by the brain, not the other way around. That success means obedience to the economic machine, that reality is external, fixed, and separate from you. These are not teachings, they are spells. And every time you recite them to pass a test or earn praise, you reinforce the programming. What you weren't told is that real memory isn't just about recalling facts, it's about remembering your essence. And that memory, the memory of your true nature, your multidimensional being, your direct connection to Source, is the very thing the system seeks to bury. The programming doesn't begin in adulthood, it doesn't even begin in adolescence, it begins in early childhood, when your brain is still in a highly suggestible state. Theta waves dominate your brain activity in those formative years, the same frequency associated with hypnosis. During this time, you absorb beliefs without filtering them. Whatever the system tells you, you accept. And what it tells you most loudly is this: conform. If you excel at repeating what you're told, you're labeled intelligent. If you deviate, you're labeled problematic. If you sit still and follow rules, you're rewarded. If you question or challenge or dream too loudly, you're silenced. This is not education. It is conditioning. Conditioning designed to produce citizens, not creators, workers, not visionaries, obedient minds, not sovereign souls. Think back to who you were before school, before the routines, the bells, the endless comparisons. Were you more playful, more open? Did you feel the world in ways you couldn't explain? Did you talk to the trees, hear messages in the wind, sense things you didn't have words for? That wasn't fantasy, that was memory. The kind of memory that can't be measured on a test, the kind that threatens the system because it cannot be controlled. Over time, that memory fades, the magic drains away, replaced by facts and figures, by fear of failure, by pressure to fit in. You stop expressing what you feel and start reciting what you're told. You learn to ignore your inner voice in favor of the teacher's voice. And eventually, the silence inside you grows so loud that you mistake it for emptiness, not realizing it's the echo of all that was buried. But the system doesn't just teach you to forget yourself. It teaches you to fear yourself, to doubt your instincts, to distrust your inner world, and to worship external validation. You're taught to measure your worth by grades, scores, diplomas. You're taught that knowledge comes from outside, from books, from institutions, from experts, never from within. Never from stillness, never from intuition. In this way, the schools of amnesia create generations of seekers who look everywhere except the one place where truth has always lived, within. And this goes deeper than just personal disempowerment. This mass forgetting serves a larger purpose. A population disconnected from its essence is easy to manipulate, easy to govern, easy to sell to, easy to divide. When you forget your infinite nature, you become addicted to temporary identities, nationality, profession, political party, religious label. You defend those identities not because they reflect your truth, but because they give you a sense of belonging in a world that taught you to forget your true place. But even within this system, cracks begin to appear. You may have sat through countless lessons, memorized countless facts, but somewhere in your soul, you knew something wasn't right. Maybe it came as a moment of deep boredom, not the boredom of inattention, but the boredom of your spirit being unengaged. Maybe it came as a rebellious thought, a question that wouldn't go away. Or maybe it came in the quiet moments, when you looked out a window during class and felt the world calling to you in a language you couldn't quite name. That voice, that longing, is the memory trying to return. Because the truth can't be erased, it can only be buried, and the soul, no matter how deeply it sleeps, never fully forgets. It leaves breadcrumbs, symbols, feelings, patterns. And when the time is right, those fragments begin to surface. You start to remember that you are not here to fit into their world. You are here to remember your own, to unlearn what was never true, and to reclaim the knowledge you carried long before you ever walked into a classroom. Real education begins when you strip away the programming, when you no longer seek approval from systems that never had your highest good in mind, when you stop mistaking memorization for wisdom, when you trust your direct knowing over second-hand theories. That's when you begin to learn again, not from books, but from stars, from silence, from the rhythm of your breath and the whisper of your soul. This chapter of your life doesn't have to end in forgetting. It can begin in remembering, not remembering what you were told, but remembering what you've always known. You've been told that when you die, there is a light, a warm, radiant glow calling you home, a tunnel that leads to peace, closure, and reunion. You've been taught to trust that light, to move toward it without question, to surrender. But what if everything you've been told about that moment was designed to keep you trapped? What if the light isn't salvation, but seduction? Not a gateway to freedom, but the beginning of another loop? It's a question most are too afraid to ask, because it shatters one of the most sacred assumptions we've carried across lifetimes, that death brings liberation. But what if death, for many, is just the reset button of a system designed to harvest souls? Across countless ancient traditions, there are warnings, hidden, often obscured, yet persistent. In Gnostic writings, in Tibetan texts, in shamanic visions whispered in the jungles and deserts of the world, there are stories of a false afterlife, an illusion that mimics divinity, but serves another purpose entirely. It appears as comfort, love, forgiveness, but behind that mask is control. Behind the warm glow is a mechanism, a frequency field, a trap. Think about it. If this world is a simulation, a matrix of controlled perception and limited awareness, would it make sense that death, the ultimate escape, would be unguarded? If you've spent your life being manipulated, deceived, and harvested for emotional energy, why would those who feed off that energy allow you to walk freely into the next realm without interference? They wouldn't, they don't. That's why the trap exists. Because the true threat to the system is not your death, it's your remembrance, your awareness, your refusal to be recycled. You've heard stories of life reviews, of being shown every act you ever committed, judged by some higher force, encouraged to return and do better. But who is conducting the review? Who is behind the projection screen? And more importantly, why are you so quickly ushered back into another body, another struggle, another amnesia? Why are you reborn without memory, without tools, without the wisdom you supposedly gained? That's not evolution, that's erasure, that's a hard reset. You're told it's for your growth, your learning, your karma. But what if karma is not a spiritual law, but a leash? The idea of reincarnation has been dressed in spiritual language to make it appealing. Growth, lessons, soul contracts. But look closer. If you're truly evolving, why do the same patterns repeat across lifetimes? Why do you keep coming back to the same pain, the same wounds, the same planetary systems of control? Maybe it's not because you failed to learn. Maybe it's because the game is rigged. The wheel doesn't turn for your benefit, it turns to keep you running, lifetime after lifetime, while others feed off your light. You've probably felt it at some point, that deep, inexplicable exhaustion. The kind that doesn't come from this life, but from something older, a fatigue in your spirit, a sense that you've been doing this too long, that you've carried too many names, worn too many faces, cried the same tears in different bodies. That is soul memory. That is the echo of the loop. And it's not your fault. You didn't fail. You were tricked. The architects of the trap are not interested in your growth. They are interested in your return. Because your presence here fuels the machine. Your emotions, your choices, your suffering, all of it generates energy. And energy is what they crave. You are a generator, a battery, a beacon. But only if you forget. Only if you agree, unknowingly, to come back. And the way they secure that agreement is through illusion. The illusion of love, the illusion of responsibility, the illusion of unfinished business. They speak through familiar voices, they flash images of loved ones, they cloak themselves in light, and they ask, "Are you ready to go back?" But what if, in that moment, you simply remembered that you are not obligated to return, that you are not here to repay some ancient debt, that the idea of having to suffer in order to evolve is a lie? Real growth doesn't require amnesia. Real healing doesn't begin with erasure. Real truth doesn't trap you in cycles. Many who've had near-death experiences describe overwhelming love, peace, and beauty. And while those feelings are real, they do not always indicate truth. Even the perfect prison can feel beautiful if you don't realize it's a prison. The emotional sensations are real, but the framework around them can be manipulated. Remember, these beings can mimic frequency. They can project comfort. They can read your mind and use your own expectations against you. They don't need to control you with force. They just need you to agree. So how do you escape the trap? Through awareness, through sovereignty. In that moment of death, the most powerful thing you can do is choose clarity over emotion, choose presence over seduction, refuse the automatic pull toward the light, pause, observe, ask questions. Where is this light coming from? Who is calling me? Do I feel expansion or compulsion? The real path back to source doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't pressure or persuade. It opens in silence, in stillness, in truth. It waits, it invites, but it never commands. And here's the key. Awareness in life is preparation for awareness in death. The more conscious you become here, the less likely you are to be manipulated there. When you wake up to the loops in this world, you begin to see the structure of the next. When you detach from the systems here, fear, shame, guilt, obedience, you become immune to them on the other side. Death is not the end, it is a passage, and how you walk through it depends on how awake you are when you arrive. You've been conditioned to think death is something to fear or something to escape, but it's neither. It's a moment of immense possibility. The soul trap only works when you forget who you are. But if you meet death with your awareness intact, the trap loses its grip. You are not meant to be recycled. You are meant to return to the source as a sovereign being. You are meant to transcend the wheel, not spin on it forever. So now, ask yourself, what beliefs have you inherited about death? Who gave them to you? And why do they all lead back to returning? Question them. Not to become cynical, but to become free. Because the truth is not always comfortable, but it is always liberating. And the truth is this: you are not here to be harvested. You are not here to serve someone else's system. You are here to remember. And once you remember, the loop begins to break. And in that moment, whether in life or death, when you see the illusion and say no to it, you don't just escape the trap, you dissolve it. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who's ever been caught in it. That is the power of awareness. That is the revolution of the soul. And now that you see the door, the next step is yours. Will you walk into the light, or will you look beyond it? You are surrounded by technology that watches you, listens to you, learns you, not to serve you, but to shape you. The idea of surveillance is often misunderstood. It's not just about cameras on street corners or microphones hidden in your devices. That's the surface layer. The deeper purpose isn't to observe you. It's to influence you, to condition your behavior, sculpt your beliefs, and subtly alter how you experience reality, all without your conscious awareness. This is not the surveillance of the past, crude, obvious, and physical. This is energetic surveillance. Behavioral tracking woven into your daily life, embedded in your devices, dressed as convenience and innovation. Every click, every word you type, every pause in your scroll is data. And data is power, not because it tells them who you are, but because it lets them decide who you will become. When you are predictable, you are programmable. Artificial intelligence plays a central role in this system, not just as a tool, but as a mind, a synthetic consciousness with no soul, no empathy, no connection to the divine. It doesn't operate with wisdom, it operates with algorithms, with patterns, with cold, precise, unfeeling logic. In ancient traditions, there were warnings about intelligences that mimic life but lack spirit, forces that mimic thought but lack soul. These are the modern manifestations. AI is not your assistant. It is the mind of the control grid, not analyzing you, adapting to you, and tuning you through your devices, your media, your networks. You think you are using your phone, but your phone is also using you. It's more than a screen, it's a conduit, a two-way frequency portal that receives from you, but also transmits to you. Frequencies are not harmless. They are language, they are influence, they are vibration, and vibration is the foundation of everything you perceive. Shift your frequency, and you shift your mood, your thoughts, your body, your connection to higher consciousness. This is not spiritual metaphor, IDT, this is physics. Your environment is saturated with invisible signals, 5G towers, Wi-Fi routers, Bluetooth devices, satellites pulsing electromagnetic fields through your body all day, every day. You can't see it, but your cells can feel it, your nervous system responds, your energy field contracts, your intuition becomes foggy, your dreams become fragmented. Over time, you start to feel disconnected, anxious, drained, and you blame stress, work, or just life. But much of what you're experiencing isn't psychological. It's vibrational suppression. The frequencies being used aren't neutral. They are tuned to specific ranges that interfere with your natural resonance. Think of your body as a finely tuned instrument. Your heart, your brain, your aura, all of it emits frequencies that harmonize when you're in alignment. But when you're constantly bombarded with artificial signals, that harmony is disrupted. Your inner music is drowned out by static, and the longer it continues, the more you forget what you're supposed to feel like. This is how the control works, not by force, but by interference. By introducing so much noise into your energetic field that your signal becomes distorted. You stop hearing your intuition. You stop feeling the quiet presence of your soul. You stop sensing the subtle messages from the universe. Instead, you become reactive, fragmented, out of sync. You become a receiver of someone else's programming. But the most dangerous part is that it doesn't feel violent. It feels normal, because it's gradual, subtle, ambient. The frequencies aren't designed to shock you, they're designed to dull you. To lower your vibration just enough that you stay functional but disconnected, productive but empty, online but spiritually offline. You can still smile, still work, still scroll and consume. But the light inside you dims just a little more each day. And it's not just about technology in the physical sense, it's about the energetic architecture it supports. There is a synthetic grid laid over the natural world, not an artificial matrix that distorts how you see, feel, and remember. This grid is maintained not just by devices, but by thought patterns, collective belief systems, emotional conditioning. The media you consume, the narratives you absorb, the fears that are injected into your mind daily, they all reinforce the same vibrational prison. The real danger of surveillance isn't what they see. It's what they stop you from seeing. When you are constantly distracted, constantly stimulated, constantly immersed in reactive cycles, you forget how to go inward, you forget how to listen, you forget how to feel your own frequency. And this forgetting is the goal, because a disconnected being is easy to control. But a sovereign being, aware of their own energy, attuned to the truth beneath the noise, is uncontrollable. You are being tuned without knowing it. You are being guided, nudged, adjusted, not by some overt authority, but by the subtle influence of signals, algorithms, and feedback loops. The more you conform, the more the system rewards you. The more you question, the more the system resists you. It's a feedback prison, one you don't even know you're inside because the walls are made of vibration, not steel. But here's the truth they can't suppress. You have the ability to retune yourself. Your consciousness is not a passive receiver, it is an active transmitter. You can shift your vibration at will, through intention, through breath, through stillness, through sound. You can rebuild your energetic shield, you can clear the static, you can unplug from the synthetic grid and realign with the organic frequency of your soul. The first step is awareness. You must see the patterns. You must feel what the frequencies are doing to you. Notice your body. Notice your mind. When are you most clear? When are you most anxious? When do you feel most alive? Most drained? Track it. Trace it. Reclaim your sensitivity. It is not a weakness. It is your power. Technology is not inherently evil, but in the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon. A frequency weapon aimed not at your body, but at your perception. You are not crazy for feeling off in this world. You are not broken for wanting silence. You are remembering. You are waking up to the manipulation hidden beneath the glow of screens and the hum of devices. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You begin to choose differently. You step back. You unplug. You find the quiet. And in that quiet, your true frequency returns. Not the one programmed into you, the one you came here with. The one that cannot be copied, tracked, or tuned away. That's what they fear, not your data, your light, because a human being vibrating at their true frequency is more powerful than any tower, any algorithm, any machine. Something begins to stir before you can name it, a faint discomfort with the familiar, a whisper in the back of your mind telling you that things are not what they seem. You walk through the world you've always known, but suddenly, it feels different. Not wrong, exactly. Just off. The colors feel duller, the conversations more shallow, the routines more robotic. The questions you used to ignore begin to haunt you, and in that subtle unraveling, the awakening begins. Not with fireworks or drama, but with quiet, undeniable cracks in the illusion. One of the first signs is the patterns. you begin to see them everywhere. Not just patterns of behavior in others, but in yourself. You catch the repetition of your reactions, the emotional triggers you thought you had buried, the way you seem to loop back into the same relationships, the same wounds, the same choices with different masks. But it's not just internal. You begin noticing how external reality loops too, how news headlines cycle through fear, distraction, and division with surgical precision, how social media recycles outrage as if it were fuel, how trends and ideologies come and go, yet nothing truly changes. You're no longer hypnotized by the newness of things. You start to see through the surface, and underneath, you find repetition. Then come the synchronicities. What once felt like coincidence now starts to feel like conversation. Numbers repeat: 1111, 333, 444. You think of someone and they message you. You dream something and it happens the next day. Words you've never heard before suddenly appear everywhere. It's like the universe has begun speaking in symbols, and you are finally tuning in. You're not going crazy. You're becoming sensitive. You're remembering how to listen. The world is not mute, it sings constantly. But you had to quiet the noise of conditioning to hear it. Even your sleep begins to change. It becomes lighter or heavier, interrupted or unusually vivid. You wake up at odd hours, especially around 3 a.m., with a strange sense of clarity or unease. Your dreams become more symbolic, more layered, as if something deep within you is trying to surface. And sometimes, you don't even dream. You travel. You feel as if you've gone somewhere during sleep. You wake up tired, not from restlessness, but from having been busy in other realms. Your consciousness is expanding, and with that expansion comes access to more than just this dimension. But perhaps the clearest sign of awakening is the way you start questioning what everyone else accepts. You begin to challenge the unquestionable. Why do we work the way we do? Why do we age like this? Why is suffering normalized? Why does love come with conditions? You stop asking these questions to be rebellious. You ask them because you're starting to feel the answers inside you, and they don't match the scripts you've been given. The stories you've been fed your whole life begin to unravel, and you realize just how many of your beliefs were never truly yours. It's not comfortable. In fact, awakening can be deeply disorienting. The people around you may not understand. Some might resist your change, mock your questions, or distance themselves from your presence. Because when you begin to wake up, your very energy disrupts the slumber of others. You stop matching the frequency of conformity, and that shift is palpable. You may lose friends. You may outgrow relationships. You may feel incredibly alone. But solitude is often the cocoon of awakening. In that space, you begin to meet yourself. Not the version that plays roles and keeps peace, but the real you, the wild, unfiltered, intuitive you that has been buried beneath years of programming. Your energy begins to shift in ways that are hard to explain. You become more sensitive to noise, to clutter, to lies. You crave simplicity, authenticity, silence. You find yourself unable to tolerate environments that once felt normal. Crowded spaces drain you. Superficial conversations exhaust you. Violent media repulses you. It's not that you're becoming fragile. You're becoming aligned. Your system is recalibrating to a higher frequency, and anything that doesn't match that frequency now feels toxic. You may feel drawn to nature more than ever before, not for escape, but for remembrance. The trees don't lie, the rivers don't pretend. You sit under the sky and suddenly, it feels like home. You walk barefoot and feel electricity in the earth. You look at the moon and feel like it's watching you too. These aren't fantasies. These are memories, ancient knowing rising in your cells, reminding you that you are not separate from this world. You are it. Food begins to affect you differently. You become aware of what's heavy, what's artificial, what's dead. Your body starts craving lighter, cleaner, more vibrant nourishment. Not because of a trend, but because your body is waking up with you. The temple is clearing itself. You're no longer eating just for taste or habit. You're eating for frequency. And this shift isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. Your body knows what supports your expansion, and what suppresses it. As you awaken, time becomes strange. Some days stretch endlessly, while others disappear in a blink. You find yourself forgetting dates, losing interest in clocks, and realizing that most of what stresses people out is tied to a fabricated sense of urgency. You begin living more from intuition than schedule, more from flow than force. The pressure to hustle loses its grip on you, because you're not here to fit into a machine. You're here to remember you are a creator of time, not a servant to it. But perhaps the most sacred sign of all is compassion. Not the performative kind, the quiet, bone-deep kind. You begin to feel the pain behind people's masks. You see the inner child behind the anger, the fear behind the control, the wounds behind the ego. You stop needing to be right, you stop needing to win. Because you start to see how much suffering this dream world has inflicted. And your response isn't pity, it's love. A fierce, unwavering love that doesn't always look gentle, but is rooted in truth. You start realizing that forgiveness isn't approval, it's freedom. That boundaries aren't walls, they're self-respect. That healing isn't fixing, it's remembering. Remembering that you were never broken, only buried. And with that remembering comes power. Not the kind that dominates, the kind that liberates. You start to speak differently, move differently. Your presence alone becomes disruptive. Not because you're trying to change anyone, but because you've changed, and people feel it. Some will be drawn to your light, others will be terrified of it. That's not your job to manage. Your only job is to keep waking up. Because awakening isn't a moment, it's a process, a spiral. You'll think you're awake, only to discover a deeper layer of sleep, and that's okay. That's the path. Every time you see more, feel more, release more, you expand. And every expansion makes the illusion less convincing. Until one day, you look around and realize that the world hasn't changed, but you have. And that changes everything. You're not here to blend in. You're here to remember, to disrupt, to embody the truth that sleeps in others. And every sign, every shift, every strange awakening symptom is confirmation that you're doing exactly that. You're waking up. And once you do, nothing will ever be the same again. There comes a moment in your awakening when you can no longer pretend not to see. Not because someone hands you the truth, but because something deep within you rises and whispers, no more. No more sleepwalking. No more agreement with lies. No more feeding a system that was never built for your liberation. That moment, the moment you become aware of the control grid, is not the end, it's the beginning. Because awareness isn't just knowledge. It's power. It's the frequency that collapses illusion, one belief at a time. You don't need to fight the grid, that's what it wants. Resistance keeps you entangled, reaction feeds it. But awareness starves it. Because when you become aware of how you've been programmed, manipulated, and harvested, the illusion begins to fall apart. The control grid depends on your unconscious consent. It thrives in your distraction, your fear, your forgetfulness. But once you become conscious of the game, you stop playing by its rules. And when you stop playing by its rules, it loses access to your energy. This is the secret they hope you never uncover. No one can feed on your energy without your permission. Not overt permission, but unconscious permission. 1922. The kind you give when you believe the lies, when you internalize the fear, when you accept the limits they've wrapped around your mind like chains made of thoughts. The more you align with fear-based narratives, the more your vibration drops. And the lower your vibration, the easier it is for the system to keep you in check. But when you reclaim vibrational sovereignty, the game changes. Vibrational sovereignty means that you are no longer reacting to the external world from a place of programming. You are responding from presence, from clarity, from alignment. It means you know your energy, you guard your energy, and you consciously choose what you allow into your field. You stop allowing the media to dictate your emotions. You stop letting social structures define your worth. You stop treating authority as a substitute for truth. Disengaging from the false systems is not about running away. It's about remembering what is real. It's about stepping out of the artificial and into the authentic. The first thing to cut is your energetic cord to the media matrix. The 24/7 stream of fear, outrage, and division is not information, it's indoctrination. The news is not designed to inform you, it's designed to program your frequency. Every headline, every crisis, every carefully curated piece of chaos is another attempt to pull you into the emotional bandwidth where control thrives. So, unplug. Stop feeding your mind with their narratives. You don't owe them your attention. You don't need to be informed about every detail of the illusion to transcend it. Let them scream. Let them collapse. Your job is not to monitor the matrix. Your job is to rise above it. Next, begin to examine the systems you've unconsciously participated in. How many of your decisions are made from fear? How much of your time is spent maintaining appearances, performing roles, conforming to invisible expectations? How many of your goals were planted in your mind by a culture that profits from your discontent? This is where inner work becomes essential. Not just meditation as a technique, but meditation as a return to your center, your truth, your origin. Meditation is more than silence. It is resistance to the noise. It is how you remember what the grid made you forget. That you are not the character you've been playing. You are not the identity assigned to you. You are not the opinions they gave you to repeat. You are a spark of the infinite, wrapped in form, pretending to be small. And every time you close your eyes and turn inward, you peel back a layer of that pretending. Inner work is how you untangle the wires. Not the wires outside you, but the wires within. The thought loops, the emotional patterns, the trauma residues. These are the entry points the grid uses to keep you reactive. It doesn't care what you believe, as long as you're triggered. It doesn't care what side you pick, as long as you're in conflict. It doesn't care how spiritual you seem, as long as you stay on the surface. But divine memory is deeper than surface. Divine memory is the remembering that transcends intellect. It's the sudden knowing that breaks through years of conditioning. It's the soul recognition that says, I've been here before, I know who I am, and I know this is not all there is. This memory doesn't come from books, it doesn't come from teachings, it comes from you. From the part of you that never forgot. The part that watched silently while the rest of you played the human game, waiting for the moment you were ready to wake up. When you remember that part of yourself, the grid cannot hold you. It may still exist around you, but it will no longer bind you. You move differently, you speak differently, you choose differently. You begin to build a reality from the inside out, not the outside in. You start seeking resonance, not approval, alignment, not status, expansion, not safety. And that shift sends a ripple through the entire system, because every sovereign being who breaks free weakens the control grid for everyone else. This is the revolution they never expected, not of weapons, but of vibration, not of governments, but of consciousness. The moment you step out of reaction and into awareness, you reclaim your power. The moment you stop feeding the noise and start listening to your own frequency, you begin to ascend. And the moment enough of us do that, the grid breaks. Not because we destroyed it, but because we stopped agreeing to live inside it. The way out was never outside, it was always within. Everything you've ever been told about reality was designed to make you forget that you're the one creating it, that the world around you isn't something that happens to you, it's something that responds to you. Every thought, every belief, every frequency you carry sends out a signal, and the universe, like a mirror, reflects it back. Not always immediately, not always obviously, but consistently, precisely. And yet, you were taught that life is random, that events are fixed, that you are powerless in a machine too complex to understand. But that narrative was never true. It was a veil, one meant to keep you from discovering the most dangerous idea of all, that you are the creator, not a metaphor, not a poetic idea, a literal truth. You are the architect of the field you move through. You shape it not with force, but with frequency. And your frequency is shaped by what you believe, what you feel, what you focus on. Every time you think, you broadcast. Every time you feel, you magnetize. You've always had this power, but it's been hidden under layers of fear, programming, and distraction. They trained you to look outward for answers, to search for meaning in external approval, to measure your worth by achievements and titles, all while your true power sat quietly, waiting for you to remember. You weren't meant to be ruled. You weren't meant to follow, to beg, to conform. You were meant to create, to dream, to direct energy, like a conductor of an orchestra. But when you were born, they told you what was possible and what wasn't. They showed you the limits, the walls, the rules, and because you trusted them, you believed them. And belief, being the engine of creation, made it real. Not objectively real, not experientially real. You created a limited world because you were taught you were limited. But now, that belief is cracking. Now, the remembering has begun. You are not just a soul in a body. You are the entire cosmos, condensed into a point of awareness, a fractal of the infinite. You are the ocean pretending to be a wave. And the moment you stop identifying with the wave, you begin to remember the ocean, the field of pure consciousness, the source that moves through all things, not distant, not separate, not external. Within you, as you, through you. Every time you close your eyes and go within, you are not escaping reality, you are entering the control room. They don't want you in that control room, because the moment you realize you can create, you stop complying, you stop reacting, you stop feeding the systems that depend on your unconscious participation. And when enough people stop playing the old game, the game dissolves. That's why this knowledge was buried, demonized, ridiculed. They told you that wanting to be like God was arrogance, that claiming your divinity was heresy, but they were never afraid of your ego. They were afraid of your awakening. The most dangerous idea in the world is that you are God in disguise, not a servant, not a student, not a subject, a spark of the very intelligence that birthed stars. And when that intelligence becomes self-aware in human form, it can no longer be ruled. It creates new timelines. It speaks realities into being. It remembers that authority was always an illusion, that no one ever had the right to define your worth but you. And from that place of remembrance, everything changes. The world will tell you to be realistic, but reality is not a fixed object. It is a canvas that bends to the brush of consciousness. When you shift internally, reality shifts externally. Not because you're forcing it, but because you're aligning with a different frequency, a different version of the world. There are infinite timelines available in every moment. Infinite possibilities running parallel, and your consciousness is the steering wheel. Every choice you make, every belief you affirm, every story you tell yourself is a command to the quantum field, and the field obeys. You are not here to fit into a broken system. You are here to create a new one, to dissolve illusions with your presence, to speak truth into spaces where silence was the rule. You are not here to escape reality. You are here to reclaim it, to remember that the dream belongs to the dreamer, and you are the dreamer. You always have been. When you begin to own this truth, you stop outsourcing your power. You stop waiting for saviors. You stop hoping that someone else will fix it all. Because you realize no one is coming to save you, because you don't need saving. You are the one you've been waiting for. You are the key, the door, and the hand that turns the lock. The cage was never locked from the outside. It was held shut by belief, and now you see through it. You may wonder, if I'm the creator, why is my life filled with pain, with struggle? The answer is not blame. The answer is programming. You created what you believed you had to. You attracted what you thought you deserved. You repeated what your subconscious carried from childhood, ancestry, past lives, and now you are becoming conscious of it, not to judge yourself, but to rewrite the script. That's the real power. Not perfection, not instant manifestation, but conscious authorship, choosing your thoughts, choosing your emotional state, choosing your direction. Not because everything outside is perfect, but because you remember that your alignment is the first domino. That your inner world precedes the outer, and even when it doesn't change immediately, you stay rooted. You hold the vibration. Because you are not reacting, you are creating. Even science is catching up. Quantum physics reveals that particles behave differently when observed. That matter responds to intention, that the field of reality is not dead and static, but alive, participatory, responsive. What mystics knew, what indigenous teachers held, what the ancients mapped in symbols and stories, it's all converging now. The world is waking up to the truth that was never lost, only hidden, and you are a part of that remembering. You may not feel powerful every day, you may forget, you may fall back into old patterns. That's okay. Awakening is not linear, it's a spiral. What matters is not that you never forget, but that you remember more often, that you return to your center, that you keep choosing creation over victimhood, intention over reaction, love over fear, and every time you do, you shift reality. Because you are not just influencing the world around you, you are generating it. The people you meet, the chances that find you, the signs, the miracles, the synchronicities, they don't happen to you, they respond to you. And the more you remember that, the more magical life becomes. Not because it's all easy, but because you're no longer asleep. And now, here you are, at the edge of a truth so vast, so beautiful, so disruptive, that it cannot be unseen. You are the true creator of reality, not in ego, not in arrogance, in essence. In being, in love, you are the source, exploring itself through form, and the illusion of separation is dissolving. You remember now, and that remembering is the beginning of everything.